please give me your full name?
My full name is Robert James Jenkins.
And your occupation?
I'm an IT consultant.
Are you affiliated with any other parties in any way?
None whatsoever.
You're now going to give evidence before the court. In doing so, you are obliged to tell the truth. This implies telling everything you know and not to conceal anything. And you must also state if you are uncertain or if you don't remember. And it's a punishable offense to lie to the court. I will ask you to make an affirmation that the evidence you are about to give is the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So I ask you, do you affirm that you will tell the plain and whole truth and not conceal anything? If so, repeat after me. I do so solemnly affirm.
I do so solemnly confirm.
Thank you. You may be seated. And this side starts asking you questions. The other side might have some questions, and I might have some questions. Vær så god, Helle.
Takk for det. Mr. Jenkins, could you start by briefly telling the court about your educational background?
Certainly. Having been educated in the UK, I studied 3 degrees over 5 years. My first degree was with electronics and physics, with honours. Following that 3-year degree, I then studied for a 1-year master's degree in optoelectronics and telecommunications. And as part of that, I achieved a postgraduate certificate of education to allow me to teach at university. And then following that, I completed a 1-year Masters of Business Administration and a Diploma of Business Administration.
And then let's turn very swiftly to your occupation, the first time that you got in contact with Dr. Wright.
Certainly. So 25 years ago, I moved from the UK to Australia. And my first job in Australia was working with the Vodafone telecommunications company, one of the largest telecommunications companies in the world. My role there in 1997 was to, in effect, run everything online for Vodafone in the area. So I was involved in the internet in the early days in the UK, and I was selected to help them go from a very simple internet connection to something which was more engaging for customers online. So technically, it was going from a 64K ISDN line, which most people have more bandwidth via the mobile phones today.
And for the record, the Vodafone is an international telecommunications group, isn't it?
Correct, yes. And at the time, it was the largest telecommunications group in the world. So my role there, it was essentially looking after everything was online, increasing the amount of bandwidth and our presence online. We needed to increase our security presence as well, and the amount of security that we had. And it was during my time at Vodafone that we sought to obtain some services to help with the implementation of security firewall. And having done a search of those companies in Australia that could provide such a service, we came across De Morgan. And De Morgan at the time had just finished implemented a firewall for the Australian Stock Exchange. And we chose that particular company because they'd already installed a highly secure solution for a very prominent financial services organisation in Australia. And it was at that time when Craig was at De Morgan that I met him, and that was in 1999.
Did Dr. Wright actually set up the firewall system for Vodafone?
Certainly for Vodafone Australia, and the same service was available for Vodafone Australasia, so the Pacific region as well. So yes, in terms of the company, at the time the company was predominantly the person. So Craig came, met with myself and some colleagues. We discussed what our requirements were, and Craig was involved in absolutely every moment of the implementation in the build.
How would you describe his professional and technical skills?
So this is one of the first times I've implemented firewall security, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And going through the process with Craig, I've since discovered, being there now in Australia for 25 years, the implementation that we did at the time, I've never seen a better implementation. And if I might describe that implementation, just the layers of security that went into the implementation. So it was everything from the dedicated PC, so only the person managing the firewall could go to that PC. It had a biometric and fingerprint scan in order to gain access to that PC. That PC had a direct connection to a data center, a secure data center on a different floor. And in that data center, it had a dedicated rack. And in that rack, it had a dedicated server. That server itself had a faceplate on the front of it with a lock and key. So in order for someone to gain physical access to that was second to none, and to this date I haven't seen something quite that secure.
Were these, we are talking about the late 90s, were these sophisticated solutions at that time?
They were, in my opinion, they were, if not leading edge, they were absolutely leading edge at the time. And the extra belts and braces, if that's such a term that translates well here, certainly the level of additional security that went into that was certainly the means of tracking any changes done to the firewall. So the key thing here was, okay, once you've got a dedicated PC for access, were there any other entry points that could be made available? So what Craig and the team implemented was a means of securing the log files and making sure that those log files were transferred to a secure location away from the firewall, and were done in such a way that you would know if the log file had been tampered with in any way.
Did you ever visit the Morgan premises?
Yes, I did. So very nearby, where Vodafone's head office was for Australia. Craig had his business just a couple of suburbs away. And I had the good fortune of being trained by Craig and some of his team. And as part of that process, I visited the De Morgan office there in Cara, or often referred to as Gordon, just on the cusp of the two suburbs. And I obtained training at that facility.
What did that facility look like?
The facility itself was a unit, a block of flat, essentially, within a series of blocks of flats. And yeah, look, I have a bit of a wry smile because I have a very fond memory of when I used to go along there. The initial, I guess, sensation you got when you visited the office there was a wall of heat. And that wall of heat was caused by enormous amount of physical infrastructure, a lot of servers, a lot of networking technology, and that was absolutely the overwhelming first impression you had when you went into the place. And that's obviously something stuck in my mind.
For how long did you stay with Vodafone?
So when I left Vodafone, I was enticed away from Vodafone in June 2000. So I was there for around 3 years.
Okay, and to which company or for which company did you start work after Vodafone?
Yeah, well, at the tail end of my time at Vodafone, I've been involved in powering some brand new technology, which are today the mobile phone apps that you have on your phones. So as a consequence of developing those, and these were world firsts that Vodafone were developing, there's a company that reached out to me to say, look, we are about to roll out again another world first in Australia. It's called an MPLS network, a network that could be rolled out where you could prioritize traffic. The reason I'm explaining that, it was the very first IP telephony. So we worked as an organization. The company was called Comindico, and they had a $500 million seed funding to get started. Through the process of a couple of years, we rolled out the largest network of its type anywhere in the world.
During that period, did you maintain the contact with Dr. Wright?
Yes, look, it went from a purely a relationship around implementation of the technology, but having gone through that process with Craig, it was quite obvious that I had the good fortune of meeting somebody who was highly intellectual, and that opportunity to kind of catch up with Craig on a regular basis is something that it turned into much more of a friendship. So yes, I did keep in touch with Craig. It'd be coffees, lunches, and the odd dinner.
Was that on a personal level, a friendly level, or did you also cooperate on a professional level?
Over the years, it's been a combination of both. Predominantly, the topic of conversation, if you like, that tends to centre around what we're working on at the time. So, as I've gone through different roles with different companies, I've moved from telecommunications into banking and finance. Those conversations, the theme of conversation changed as a consequence, but it was typically reflective of exactly what we were working on, what Craig was working on, and what I was working on.
During these early years, did you two discuss alternatives to payment, to ordinary payment?
I think even more so than that. I think most of the conversations we would have, it was an opportunity to engage an intellectual, and I wouldn't consider myself an intellectual, but nonetheless with somebody who had similar smarts, similar knowledge, to challenge everything that we were working on at the time. So if it was to do with some Cisco technology, within the telco space, then the opportunity to have a chat with Craig around how you might do things differently or better, it was that opportunity to kind of bounce those ideas off each other. And so, yes, in terms of the kinds of things that we discussed over the years, that we always took that opportunity to kind of challenge what it is we were working on to try and make it better.
Did you take an interest in e-gold?
Yes.
What is that?
So e-gold was a technology that was introduced to the market in the late 90s. I bought into e-gold in around 2001. I noticed specifically 2001.
How come that you can know that so many years after?
Oh, look, as far as that's concerned, it's still, to this day, I still think I have some money that's tied up in e-gold, even though e-gold now has been kind of mothballed for years. But I know that because recently eBay have let me know that I've been a customer of theirs for 22 years. So I joined eBay in the year 2000. And to buy things on eBay or to buy things online back then, there wasn't an easy mechanism of giving money to someone and getting the goods, guaranteed getting the goods back. So eGold provided an escrow-like service, I think is the term, where effectively you place your trust in another entity. You put the money